Hi, we appreciate you joining us today for Webinar Wednesday. We are so pleased to have Kate and Jorge from the McAllen Public Library with us. But before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping things just to mention. First, we are recording, so if you have to if you want to share this with your colleagues or watch it later, it'll be available on our website starting tomorrow. But since you're here joining us live, you have the opportunity to ask questions. Please feel free to use the Q&A widget. It's going to be at the bottom of your screen. Kate, Jorge, thank you so much for joining us for Webinar Wednesday.
Thank you, Ashley. It's so
Thank
wonderful to
you.
be here.
Yes.
Awesome. So I wanted to start a little bit by asking you about McAllen Public Library. If you could tell us a little bit about it and what makes your library so unique to your community.
Well, the thing that has given us the most traction over the past almost 15 years is that we used to be a Walmart, a big box building, and the city was looking for a new library. And so rather than tear it down and starting over, they actually repurposed almost every part of our 123,000 square foot facility. The only part they didn't use was the auto center. And you can see in this slide what that looks like. We have this wow feature fountain in the front. This tower on the left side kind of, glows different colors at night. So really awesome. Can you go to the next? And then this is our lobby gallery. So we're so fortunate that we have enough space to actually have an art gallery right here in the library. And that changes anywhere between 2 and 4 times a year with international and national artists who work with us. And anything from paintings to photography and sometimes even 3-dimensional art.
Absolutely.
And we have every Saturday morning, we have the farmers market. That was started pretty much the year that we opened in 2011. And every Saturday morning, our farmers market gathers out in the front of our building underneath our canopy. And they sell these incredible vegetables and fruits and plants, but also like bread products and some other homemade crafts. So it's very popular. Next. And this is our children's department. And I like to say that our children's department is at about 40,000 square feet, and that was the size of our former building. So, but we are servicing a pretty large public, and so we wanted to make sure that our children's department has the room that they need to be able to grow, whether starting from board books and going all the way up to regular juvenile fiction and nonfiction. Next. And this is just a few views coming from on the top right, coming from our lobby area, actually into the library proper. We actually have a welcome desk. That's kind of like information central, everything from where are the restrooms to how do I get a library card. The bottom left shows some of our display areas, and this was designed by MS&R. Well, they have a new name now, but they were MS&R at the time. And they made it so that it shows movement and migration throughout the library. And so underneath these big pedants they're actually wayfinding signs. But underneath there's always like a little respite area, and it's kind of like the Rio Grande Valley is a migratory channel for birds and butterflies. And so this was meant to mimic like when they come down and take a little rest, except for in the library, people cozy up and read. And then we do offer like many different types of spaces, from quiet reading rooms to free study rooms. We also have room rentals. We have an auditorium. So we really are a building for the people.
That's awesome. Jorge, is there anything you want to add to that?
Oh, absolutely. Like Kate mentioned, with the size of our library, it's really a beacon for resources in our community, and not only within our own municipality, but as the largest library in South Texas in our area. members from all over our county come to this space and use it because of its flexible nature. Like our art gallery and our spaces, we've hosted weddings. It's an incredible space, and you can really get a feel for the vibe in our community, and it's an awesome place to be.
Fantastic. So I have some questions that I'd like to ask, and feel free to answer or skip if you want. But the first one is, I want to set the stage for our conversation. So McAllen was a longtime user of the Library Corporation's Library.solution. Can you walk us through what prompted the initial decision to explore other options to migrate to a different ILS?
Sure. Hey, you want me to? I can.
Go ahead,
I know.
Jorge.
Yeah. So with MPL traditionally sharing or historically sharing an ILS with our county's consortium, which consists of 13 libraries, um, we we had considerations to make in terms of what the best options were for what the best fit was, and at the end of the day, considering our needs for cataloging and levels of expertise within our own county. Uh, we did a lot of research and ultimately we're looking for something that would support our growing collection and offer essentially value-added services, which seems kind of to be the trend here, such as room reservations, computer time management, mass communication tools, all these things. And allowing us to be able to centralize that on a single invoice is very important. So definitely.
And also, I'll just add to that that of those 13 libraries, McAllen is definitely the largest. Edinburgh is the next largest, and then there's a smattering of small to medium libraries, and then some very small libraries. So
Mhm.
our needs really differ greatly, but we made a commitment to band together as a county, as a federation, to try to make decisions that are in the best interest of all the libraries.
Excellent. So once you made the decision, you began the process of migrating to a new system. What was the experience like from a technical and a staffing perspective?
Well, the process itself was pretty straightforward. TLC provided all the resources we needed and in exporting those records. But essentially, once we were able to migrate, we found some challenges that weren't a great fit for our needs. And otherwise, as a consortium, we held meetings and made sure that we communicated with our representatives to try to get it to the level of function that we needed, but ultimately not a good fit.
So I had the experience, actually the pleasure to work with TLC
Yeah.
when McAllen first joined back in 2009. So, and prior to that, I'd been with different library systems outside of McAllen. And so, I knew what a migration process should look like, how much work is done behind the scenes, under the hood, the conversations that have to take place, the data that has to be mined, putting all those things together. That did not happen this time. Okay, so that was like our first clue, like how can we do this in such a short amount of time? And we were assured that that process was going to go smoothly and according to plan. But in fact, when we got to the very near launch date, it was not ready at all. And so, in a to really summarize it, it was not good.
So after going live on the new ILS, what were some of your immediate impacts? Expected, unexpected, on your staff's daily workflows, like circulation, cataloging, reporting? You're laughing.
No, it's touching on what Kate was talking about here. Our go live was squeezed into essentially a weekend, And leaving this data import and the system setup kind of left us with an incomplete launch day. So we weren't functional day one. And obviously this caused so many disruptions in our workflow, circulation, cataloging, reporting, and staff faced a lot of difficulties with this inconsistent access to our data and our records. And not to mention, of course, our patron, our public, being forward facing with the public, we got a lot of feedback from our community on it. So
yeah, I was going to ask about that, about how your patrons and your community, how they reacted to this new system.
Our patrons, especially our super users, we have so many patrons that are
absolutely.
regular users, right? They come in with their families or on their own with their family, their wives and or their husbands, and they're not shy sharing their opinions with us, and which is how we like it to be, right? But they made no bones about it. They did not like it. We were asked things like, "What's wrong with your computers? Why can't I find anything?" And so those are the kinds of things that we had to face up to. And you know, I mean, whenever there's a migration, you know things are going to change. You know that there's going to be this kind of, phasing in period. And but I remember there were a few days where I went out to the circulation desk and I was like, guys, we're gonna learn this together. We're gonna do this together. And then we were doing all these different experiments and we literally could not navigate it. We could not find the items, even when we had an item in hand, we couldn't find it in the catalog. So
Wow. And so that was sort of the staff facing interface. And how about the patron facing the pack? How did folks react to your new pack?
Yeah, our public, the pack itself was also facing similar challenges that we were getting as staff members. So, in addition to not being able to locate anything properly, there was issues with statuses, which obviously just throws everything off. Thankfully our staff pivoted, and we were making shelf checks and made sure they got access to the resources they needed. But yeah, ultimately, that was not a positive experience for our patrons on the pack side.
There must have been a turning point. Can you share the moment or like the series of events that led you to realize the new system wasn't working or wasn't the right long-term fit for McAllen?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jorge, and then I'll share my story.
Yeah, for sure. We worked closely together with it on this, and despite our best efforts, after spending countless hours trying to get these data issues resolved, we just found ourselves limited in terms of like our support with vendors. So the scale of our consortium and the amount of data that we have, it wouldn't work with a single point of contact. And it's something I really appreciated when we migrated back to TLC, having the multiple contacts, that team that was dedicated to addressing the complexities of this kind of setup. And in my own experience, I had not migrated an ILS, and Kate, was very vocal, like, hey, this is how this works typically. And it seemed like such a straightforward process that it shouldn't be an issue with the advancements in technology. But no, evidently and clearly, there was a lot of promises that were made, and unfortunately, it wasn't the right long-term fit. But yeah, we had some conversations here, Kate.
Yeah, for me, there was this singular moment. Of course, I've been hearing all the complaints, and even one of the former directors of this library cornered me at a public event and said, "What's going on with your ILS?" But it wasn't. I had a meeting with our library advisory board president, who is a power user of the library, and his whole family is. And when he told me that he was having such trouble navigating the catalog that he would rather just go buy the books on Amazon than use the library, that was heartbreaking to me. Because I really, respect him, and I respect all of our patrons. And so at that point, I came back from that meeting and I said to Jorge, this has got to change. We have to go in a different direction. We must do that. And then we started reaching out to the vendor to have some, serious meetings about expectations and delivery.
Wow. So bouncing off of that question and about what you had just said about the serious conversations you were having, making the decision to switch back to TLC must have been very significant. What did that internal conversation between you, Jorge, and Kate and your team look like?
Go ahead, Kate.
Well, I mean, for me, like on my end, I had to let our city administration know that we were going in a different direction. They were just like, sorry, hit a wall here. We were trying to go in this other direction because of these reasons about being a federation and being mutually supportive. But now what I said is it's not a good fit for us. It's not serving our McAllen public. And we don't just serve, Jorge mentioned it earlier, we don't only serve McAllen residents, we serve all over the Rio Grande Valley, and in some cases, even outside of the state. So, the ILS is the backbone of a library, and we were dealing with something that definitely needed that change. So I immediately, got approval from the city level, but Jorge can tell you about the staff level.
Yeah, no, on our end, it was certainly a difficult decision given the amount of time we had already invested. When obviously collaborating and having transparency and having these honest conversations, and ultimately Kate's leadership to be able to advocate for us and get us the financial resources we needed to be able to make this change was a huge hit. But those conversations were necessary, and once we made that decision, we just were able to move forward and correct course.
Did you find you had a lot of backing from your staff for this decision? Or was it a little bit more of you had to convince them that this was the right move to come back to TLC?
On the staff end, I can definitely say that they were very happy to hear that we would be moving back to TLC, not only because of familiarity, but it's time proven, and we've had many years of experience with TLC, and they were well, it was a very welcome change, I should say. Yes.
And our patrons too told us they were very happy.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. That was a pleasant departure from the few months that we had the opposite.
We were so celebratory about it that I actually made that the main point of the main topic for my director's column that goes into our monthly newsletter.
Yes.
It was basically said, hooray, we're back with TLC, and thanked all of our patrons for their patience, and welcomed them to come back in and enjoy the library again. Because what's the whole point? We don't want to drive people away. We want them to come use us more.
Absolutely. So from a vendor relationship perspective, what was it like to re-engage the TLC team? Like, how did they support your decision to come back? How was the general vibe?
Working with them on the from the technical aspect, TLC team is incredibly supportive and welcoming. They understood our challenges, they worked closely with us, and they ensured that we had a smooth transition back. Unfortunately, the experience we had was very brief, and that setup was obviously not going to be setting us up for success, and the responsiveness and familiarity with our consortium structure made it that much easier. And we value that strong sense of vendor partnership, definitely more so now after experiencing otherwise. But yes.
And I've been in this business now for well over 30 years, and So, staff know that I always say, what is that going to look like? So I knew what the migration back should look like in terms of regular meetings that we could count on, regularly scheduled meetings. It wasn't just like having to call back and forth, which is what we were doing with the former vendor. And every one of the meetings was professional, and I felt such a sense of relief knowing that we were putting ourselves in the hands of experts, and every person had their area of expertise. We knew exactly where to kind of to launch our questions to. And at this point, I just want to take a moment to give the flowers where they're due, and to thank our team: Hallie Matthews, Vicki Winstead, Amber Downs, Sherry Banks, Beth Lenz, Michelle Weidman, and of course Tammy also for hearing me out and kind of shepherding this process along. And so again, I give them all the flowers and all the appreciation for getting us back on track.
I'm going to make sure that they watch this so that you can see that. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, sometimes our implementation teams and our support teams do go a little unnoticed outside, but it's great to hear when you have such a positive experience. So let's talk about life after leaving and coming back home. Now that you're back on the TLC Library.Solution ILS, what has been the biggest positive change you've seen from your staff? Is there a sense of relief or efficiency that you can describe?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a sense of relief. Staff have expressed appreciation for the restored functionality, obviously, and having again that familiarity of the system, and even for new staff who aren't familiar with it before, how user friendly and the aesthetics of it is very engaging for them and easy to learn. So yeah, of course, reporting, cataloging, circulation, everything stabilized, and we've been able to actually refocus on service rather than troubleshooting this, around the clock. So it's definitely a sense of relief there.
Especially for Jorge, since he was handling practically all of the technical problems on our side. So flowers to Jorge as well.
Thank you.
But also, like Jorge mentioned, the interface, which our patrons really like, our staff really like it. And we're really happy to have Scout back. And the children's page, which is absolutely delightful. So yeah, we've heard, from our patrons and the staff to say that they're really happy to be back. And for me, there are just certain things that I really missed, like being able to see the number of circulations of any particular material right on that book page. That's just, just for looking at, how much something has circulated, it gives you some valuable information. Of course, you want to delve in further and get more data on it, but it's a great first look, and I really missed that. I was so happy to have that when we got back.
That's a great feature to point out. Sometimes I forget it's there on the title page to see how many circs a book gets. That's a really cool reminder.
And the MARC record too.
Yes,
it's great to have that.
So, Kate, from your perspective, what's the most significant improvement for patrons?
Well, it's the ease of use. We want it. It's great that we have this beautiful library, right, and all these great services, and we put on great events and all that stuff. That's wonderful. But on a day-to-day basis, like the bones of the library is the ILS. And if the ILS is not functioning, essentially the library isn't functioning. And it doesn't matter how great your services are and how many giveaways you have and the art gallery and the farmers market and all that. If a patron comes in and has a bad experience, they're going to project that bad experience. And we do live in the age of social media. So while it might take 7 to 10 positive comments to convince someone to go somewhere, it might only take one negative comment for people to stay away, which again is the antithesis of our mission, right? We want to bring people to the library. We want them to have a great experience. And part of our service is our ILS. So I can't begin to tell you how it was just like this whole level of stress came off me, that I didn't have to go to bed at night or wake up in the morning where my first thought was, oh my gosh, what are we going to do about this ILS? Yeah, that's me. That's how I worry about things.
So that says a lot. I want to go back to the data migration part a little bit, and what it was like returning, like not just from the implementation folks standpoint, but did the previous, your previous experience, that migration coming back to TLC, was the process smoother? Like you had mentioned before, what was it like?
Yeah. Our prior experience with TLC really helped streamline that return. Fortunately, because of the window of time, our data was also available. So reimportation was definitely more efficient, and we're working with a team that have like the data structure made a big difference in minimizing our downtime. It was truly impressive. So positive experience, 5 stars.
Okay, I'm going to put 5 stars
5 stars.
on our social media now and say 5 stars, Jorge.
5 stars.
So I just want to close out this section of questions, the question about no, I'm going back real quick because my brain stopped. I want to go now onto some advice and some key takeaways that you can give folks who are either considering moving to a new ILS or just thinking about that process altogether. So based on this entire journey, what is the single biggest piece of advice that you would give another library director or a board that is considering a major ILS migration?
I think I have a few biggies, and one is check the references. Make sure that the ILS that you're considering can handle the size library that you are. Because, they could have a great track record, but if they've only handled small or medium-sized libraries or only school libraries, that's a red flag for me. As well as, can they accommodate multiple locations? So this was one of the things that we found out too late, that we're McAllen Public Library. We have 3 locations, our main library, then we have our Lark branch and our Palmview branch. But what we found out was that they were under this other vendor, they were 3 different catalogs. So they were not united under McAllen Public Library. So our patrons would have to hit all 3 catalogs to be able to find what they needed, which is completely unacceptable, right? So that's another consideration, is how do they manage various locations? And just ask a lot of questions. Don't settle for intentions. Make sure that there's a proven track record to be able to back up the claims. Jorge, what else would you add to that?
Yeah, no, you hit all the main points there, like to the background check essentially of sorts on this. Ideally, maybe even having access to an existing customer who is nearby, and being able to use that or work with them to test that environment in real time. I'm a loss for the word here, but essentially that virtual environment they can provide that simulates the database may not give you the full experience, but working with that customer, like Kate touched on, and checking the references goes a long way, and looking at that and being able to use it prior to launching, big one. But definitely, I learned quite a lot, and I'll always remember Kate's words on. They're like, oh,
So
yeah,
you're thinking like having a sandbox almost, like an
yeah. Thank you. Yes, yeah. No,
yeah.
definitely the sandbox environment that they provided um, did seem, functional, but it's not until that data is migrated and set up in the environment and in the structure that we um, have been accustomed to or that we need for our community's needs. So, and not only just finding someone, but someone that has a similar structure to what your own needs are.
That's an excellent idea. One I haven't thought of is partnering almost with a neighbor. That's such a great piece of advice to give because they know best and they can tell you the ins and outs.
Absolutely.
So, what are the key questions you know now to ask a vendor that you might not have thought of before this experience?
No, I've definitely learned to ask more detailed questions about their support models, um, hours of operation, data migration timelines, and essentially just how the vendor handles implementations, especially at large scale as our own collection is. So just understanding how flexible the system is in accommodating diverse workflows, and if there are value added services, again, uh, going through and listening to existing users and on their experience of how those services actually integrate so that it's not just um, filler content, or it's just like a quick throw on there to for value added purposes, but actually a functional product. So that's definitely something I ask not only to the vendor but to
Yeah,
neighboring libraries.
and kind of to piggyback on that, we had looked at some of the value added items, and at before we were migrating,
Mhm.
and Jorge and I talked about it, and we said, you know what, we're not going to sign up for those value added because we already have vendors who are doing a great job doing those services. So let's let other people implement it first, and let's not cancel our contracts with these other vendors, and now I'm super glad that we made that decision. Because that would have been another, some other difficulties that we would have to face and make decisions about. But I think also another super important thing is who actually handles the data. Like, is it handled in-house? Is it third-partied out? Those are things that didn't even really occur to me, but became sort of central questions for us in terms of service and troubleshooting. And even like Jorge mentioned about, time difference, like once you put that work order in.
So that's what you're referring to when Jorge says hours of operation, not your hours of operation, but the support hours of operation. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important because being working with different time zones, and
Mhm.
it's always challenging, but typically vendors would have hours that cover, the majority at least of those operating hours, or they have an emergency number, things like of that nature. But yeah, definitely a learning experience. And
And
I am glad I did remember asking Kate, should we just go ahead and implement these value added solutions like time management, like let's go all in? And this is where the experience comes in. She's like, no, we're gonna hold off, and she already had a plan, and I'm glad we followed it. Otherwise, we would have been in deeper waters there.
Yeah.
Yeah, time zones can definitely be tricky because I know we're in two different time zones, and
Mhm.
I keep forgetting time differences for sure. So I want to close out with a question, with a final question before I get into any Q&As that our audience has asked. But how has this experience, leaving and then returning, shaped your philosophy on the importance of a strong vendor relationship for, the health of the library overall?
Well, I think I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier when I said that, you have to have a healthy ILS because that is by and large the patron experience, right?
Yeah.
It's coming, it's coming into the building. Certainly it's the face-to-face contact. It's good communication. But, the ILS is where we get the job done, where the business actually happens. So, if patrons are not happy with their transactional experience, they're not going to be happy with the library. And again, that runs counter to our mission, which is, to provide access and information to a diverse population and to keep them coming back.
Yeah, no, for sure. This experience has just reinforced the concept of how critical the strong and communicative and responsive vendor relationships are. Like it's not just about the software, it's definitely about the people behind it. And good partnership can make it huge difference in how effective this is deployed and how well it serves our community. I know with TLC, we've have really great relationships with y'all's support team and your leadership, and it's been definitely a learning experience, like I said before, and moving forward, definitely something we keep in mind with all vendor relationships, not just with ILS, but just vendor relationships in general.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess just as like a final note, we feel really confident being in partnership with TLC. You don't, the worst thing is like when you wake up every morning, you come to work and then you're like, oh, I found this other thing. And then there's this other thing. And then it's like, it never ends. And so it's just such a pleasure to work with TLC. Like once we launched, there were like a few little bobbles, but those are to be expected, but they were smoothed out very quickly. I just can't team and how great they were to work with, and we felt really hurt. We felt like they listened to us, they heard our concerns, and we felt really cared for, as a library.
I love hearing that, that you felt cared for. I've gone through several migrations when I was a librarian, and I can definitely agree with everything you just said. So that was my last question, but I want to check the audience and see what they have, if anyone else has any questions. But before I do that, I'm going to launch a poll and see if anyone wants a little bit more information, not only about TLC, but just a little bit more about our ILSs, about our processes. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll that says more information, yes or no. It's cool if you don't want to answer because you don't have to. So one question that I see here is, I lost my Q&A box. Oh, there it is. How long did it take from the moment you decided to go back to TLC to the time you went live? How long was that process? Was it months, weeks, days?
And we
Approximation.
started in December, right, with the other vendor.
Yes, correct.
And by February, we were saying, this is no bueno.
Yeah.
We need to do
Oh,
something.
Yeah, pretty early on, right? You're right, Kate.
Yeah. I distinctly remember that meeting of asking, like, is this going to happen or is it not? Is this a wish or are you going to do it? I mean, I had to ask very pointed questions in that meeting, which was uncomfortable for everyone, but had to happen. So that was February, and by March, we had already contacted TLC and were getting things done administratively and not financially and also with TLC.
Wow, that's faster than I realized. So I'm going to end our poll, and then another Q&A came in. What was the process / reason for choosing the other vendor initially? Did the parties who chose it talk to their other customers first? If they did, had they received good feedback?
So that decision, our 14 or 13 libraries are yoked together in a sort of loose federation. And so each one of the library directors is on the board of directors and has a voice. So it was by a vote, which I was opposed to, to say, but I was outvoted. But because of the financial structure of how our ILS gets paid by the county, and also to make sure that, you know, we could still share our resources, that decision was made. And even though I was not in favor of it, I went along for the greater good, and also because the ILS gets paid by our county. And so, you know, that was the initial, but so I went into it reluctantly, but that was the reasoning behind the decision. The second part of your question, yes, we did look at a couple of other customers, but this was actually another point that I used to indicate why I was not in favor of it, because they didn't have anything that resembled our structure. And then, you know, case in point that I had mentioned about our 3 libraries right here in McAllen, we're one library system, and they were treating us as separate entities. So they didn't understand the concept of McAllen Public Library within the other 13 libraries. Like, those are separate because we're all municipal libraries here in South Texas. I hope that makes sense and answers the question.
Another question came in. How much of what went wrong with the other ILS was a misunderstanding your needs versus making false claims about what they could do?
50-50?
Yeah, I'd have to, yeah, even split.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were very clear in what we needed. We were very clear in the structure we needed. So there wasn't follow through. A lot of promises were made, and unfortunately it didn't quite pan out the way that it was described to us. And yeah, unfortunately, it's like 50-50 miscommunication. And even though all of our communication was in person in English and everything, even just the way we would describe things, because the headquarters was in another country, there is different takes, even terminology, like a hold is not a hold, it's a reserve of this and that. There's like a language difference that even within the industry of the library changes, and it's enough to affect how our patrons understand how to use a pack, how our staff uses it. And because a lot of these things were hard coded, there wasn't any changing it. You had to adapt to it. And that misunderstanding on all fronts, even communicating our own needs, it was very challenging. So yeah, like I said before, not a good fit, but
yeah, no, that is so true. They had a whole different type of terminology, and some of the terminology was like adjacent to what our terminology was, but not quite. And so there was always this like back and forth about what you would think is just like common knowledge, and yeah, we were having to explain how American libraries function. I think part of it was that their specialty was with schools. So there were a lot of things like, there's such a thing as too many choices, I promise you. And they had way too many choices, right? What do patrons want to do? They want to go in, they want a keyword search, or they have a specific title, bing, bang, boom, they want to be out. They want to be out the door. They want to have their materials. They want to have the service that they wanted. They don't want to have to go through. I mean, even on the staff side, I said, you know, just to do a simple search, I've got to go, you know, 5, 6, 7 clicks in. And it was it was a bad fit, right, Jorge? That's what we said.
Yes.
Not a good fit. Not a
Not a
good
good
fit
fit.
for our patrons.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot tell you how wonderful it was that you both agreed to come and chat with me and answer all of my questions and our audience's questions. So I'm just gonna, we don't have any more questions right now, but if anyone feels they have any additional questions after the fact, please feel free to email us. But tomorrow we will have our presentation with our conversation with Kate and Jorge up on our website, tlcdelivers.com/webinars. Again, thank you both so much. This has been very enlightening, even from a former librarian perspective of everything that you, what you went through, but also what you were able to accomplish coming back to TLC. So thank you again. And for everyone who was here, thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Ash.
And
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
thanks
you.
for having us. Bye.
Bye.